His grip on the chalk tightened. "Well," he finally said, his voice carefully neutral, "it seems Miss Ellison has a unique way of approaching the material." "Unique," Dr. Parker counted, tilting her head slightly. "I'd call it advanced. She didn't just solve the problem," she continued. "She optimized it. That's not just talent. That's mastery." Henshaw's lips pressed into a thin line. He was cornered, and he knew it. His usual tactics wouldn't work here, not after Monica had proven herself so decisively, not with Parker reinforcing it. So, he did what men like him did best. He adjusted his tie, forced a thin smile, and nodded. "Yes," he said. "Well, I suppose we'll see how she performs on the next exam." Monica didn't flinch, but she understood exactly what he meant. This wasn't over, but it didn't have to be. She had made her point. As the class gathered their things, the murmurs returned, but they were different now. Students who had ignored her before now glanced at her with curiosity, some with admiration, others with quiet uncertainty, as if they were recalibrating their assumptions in real time. One of them, a guy who had openly doubted her earlier, hesitated as she packed her bag. "Hey," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "That was impressive." Monica didn't pause. "I know." He blinked, then let out a small laugh. "All right, then," he said. She slung her backpack over her shoulder, walking toward the exit, her steps steady. She had spent years proving herself in spaces that weren't made for her. This was nothing new. But today, something had shifted. Not just in the room, not just in the way people saw her, in the way she saw herself. She had known her worth before. Now they did too, because respect isn't something you wait for, it's something you demand, and she would demand it every single time. If you've ever felt underestimated, let this be your reminder. Your talent speaks for itself. You don't need permission to be great. Keep pushing. Keep proving them wrong. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that matter. His grip on the chalk tightened. "Well," he finally said, his voice carefully neutral, "it seems Miss Ellison has a unique way of approaching the material." "Unique," Dr. Parker counted, tilting her head slightly. "I'd call it advanced. She didn't just solve the problem," she continued. "She optimized it. That's not just talent. That's mastery." Henshaw's lips pressed into a thin line. He was cornered, and he knew it. His usual tactics wouldn't work here, not after Monica had proven herself so decisively, not with Parker reinforcing it. So, he did what men like him did best. He adjusted his tie, forced a thin smile, and nodded. "Yes," he said. "Well, I suppose we'll see how she performs on the next exam." Monica didn't flinch, but she understood exactly what he meant. This wasn't over, but it didn't have to be. She had made her point. As the class gathered their things, the murmurs returned, but they were different now. Students who had ignored her before now glanced at her with curiosity, some with admiration, others with quiet uncertainty, as if they were recalibrating their assumptions in real time. One of them, a guy who had openly doubted her earlier, hesitated as she packed her bag. "Hey," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "That was impressive." Monica didn't pause. "I know." He blinked, then let out a small laugh. "All right, then," he said. She slung her backpack over her shoulder, walking toward the exit, her steps steady. She had spent years proving herself in spaces that weren't made for her. This was nothing new. But today, something had shifted. Not just in the room, not just in the way people saw her, in the way she saw herself. She had known her worth before. Now they did too, because respect isn't something you wait for, It's something you demand, and she would demand it every single time. If you've ever felt underestimated, let this be your reminder. Your talent speaks for itself. You don't need permission to be great. Keep pushing. Keep proving them wrong. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that matter. Though Gregory was always kind to her in his own way, the walls between them were thick, built on a foundation of privilege and prejudice. Lily was often lost in the isolation of a world that expected little from her, and she longed to know more, longed for the kind of freedom she saw in the eyes of others, like Malik. Malik's attention never wavered as he watched her, feeling something pull at him, urging him to pay attention. She stood by herself in the lobby, looking at the ground, her hands wringing nervously. There were moments when the world seemed to stop, when everything else around him blurred into the background. This was one of those moments. Lily's distress was undeniable, and it wasn't just about the surface-level discomfort of being in a high-class environment. Malik felt the weight of her fear, the fear that seemed to creep through the luxurious surroundings like an invisible shadow. There was something more to her than the glittering hotel and expensive clothes. Malik couldn't explain why, but he felt an unspoken need to help her. It wasn't just sympathy. It was a deep, instinctual pull to protect someone who, despite all appearances, was alone in a way that few people could understand. The contrast between the opulence of the Grand Plaza Hotel and the deep sadness on Lily's face was striking. It felt like she was trapped in a golden cage, her isolation stark against the wealth that surrounded her. Malik knew that something wasn't right, but he didn't yet know how deep the situation went. He had no idea just how intertwined his life would become with hers. The moment of horror hit Malik like a punch to the gut. He was watching Lily, still standing in the hotel lobby, when everything changed. A man, tall and imposing, appeared from behind her. Malik immediately sensed something was wrong, the way the man's eyes locked onto Lily, the way his hand reached out to grab her arm. It was too forceful, too urgent, and the fear on Lily's face was unmistakable. She struggled, but the man wasn't letting go. Malik could see the terror in her eyes, and it made his blood run cold. He didn't know what was going on, but he knew that Lily needed help. Malik felt a rush of adrenaline flood his body. He had to act. He couldn't just stand there and watch this happen. His instincts told him that something was very wrong, but he didn't have time to figure it all out. The man was already leading Lily away, pulling her towards a secluded part of the hotel. Malik's mind raced, and his legs moved before he could think. He had to follow them. He had to find out what was going on. As he trailed them through the hotel, keeping a safe distance, Malik felt the tension rising in his chest. The man didn't seem to be worried about being seen. He moved with purpose, with an unsettling calmness that made Malik's heart race even faster. But it was Lily's face that haunted him. Her eyes, wide with fear, kept glancing back at him, silently begging for help. Malik knew he couldn't ignore it. He couldn't walk away and pretend everything was okay. He had to keep following them. The hotel, usually a place of luxury and comfort, now felt cold and suffocating. Every corner they turned seemed to bring them deeper into an unfamiliar part of the building. Malik's heart pounded in his chest as they neared a secluded area, far from the main lobby. It felt like he was walking into a trap, and every step he took, he could feel the danger growing closer. At the end of the hallway, the man stopped, and Malik hesitated. He knew this was the moment. He couldn't let them disappear behind those doors. He had to act, and he had to act fast. As the man opened the door to a darkened room, Malik's stomach twisted. He couldn't let Lily go in there. He couldn't let this man take her away. Without thinking, Malik moved toward the door, staying as quiet as possible. His pulse was racing, and his breathing was shallow. This was a moment of truth. Would he be able to help her? Would he be able to stop whatever was happening? But before he could make his move, the door slammed shut. Malik's heart sank. He was too late. They were gone, and he had no idea what to do next. His mind raced with the possibilities. What was this man doing with Lily? Was she really in danger, or was this something else? Malik didn't know the answers, but one thing was clear. He couldn't give up. He couldn't let Lily down. The chase was just beginning. Malik had made the decision to help, but now he needed to figure out how to save her. He had no idea what was happening, but he knew one thing for sure. He was not going to stop until he had the answers. What will Malik do next? Keep watching for the shocking revelation. Malik's heart raced as he sprinted through the hotel, desperation driving every step. He needed help. He couldn't do this alone. The man had taken Lily, and Malik knew that time was running out. He made his way to the front desk, hoping that someone would listen, but the staff's indifference only fueled his panic. They barely looked up from their work, more concerned with protocol than aiding him in a life-or-death situation. "Please, you have to help me. A girl was taken. She's in danger," Malik pleaded, his voice shaking with urgency. But the hotel staff remained unmoved, unfazed by his desperation. One of the clerks barely glanced at him. "I'm sorry, but you'll have to fill out a report," they said flatly. "You need to calm down." Malik could feel the frustration rising within him, but there was no time to argue. The clock was ticking, and Lily was in grave danger. He ran to the nearest payphone, his fingers trembling as he dialed 911, hoping the police would take him seriously. But when the operator answered, Malik's plea was met with skepticism. "Are you sure about this, kid? Why are you making up stories?" Officer 1 asked, as though questioning Malik's every word. "Get a grip. Maybe you misunderstood the situation," Officer 2 added dismissively. The weight of their judgment hit Malik like a blow to the chest. He was telling the truth, but no one believed him. The officers, judging him not for the facts, but for his age and the color of his skin, seemed to dismiss him as nothing more than a scared child looking for attention. But Malik wasn't about to give up. "I'm telling you," Malik yelled into the receiver, his voice cracking with emotion. "She's in danger. I saw the fear in her eyes. You have to help her." But the officers were already hanging up, their disbelief clear in their tone. Malik was crushed. For a moment, it felt like he had no allies. But despite the sting of their dismissal, Malik's determination only grew stronger. He couldn't stop now. He continued his pursuit, his mind racing. He had no idea where Lily was, but he couldn't let her down. His instincts told him that she was close, that the man hadn't gotten far. As Malik pushed through the hotel corridors, his heart skipped a beat when he finally saw Lily. She was being dragged down the hallway by the man, her face bruised, her expression lifeless. Malik could feel his anger rising, but there was no time to waste. He had to act fast. Malik's legs burned as he sprinted toward the reception area, hoping to find someone, anyone, who could help. But when he burst through the doors of the lobby with Lily in his arms, the reaction from the hotel staff was not what he had expected. One of the receptionists looked at Malik with a look of disbelief. "What's going on here? Why did you bring her here?" she demanded, her voice rising with suspicion. She turned to the security guards, her words sharp and accusatory. "Call security. He's probably the one who hurt her." Malik's heart sank. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. The hotel staff, seeing a young black boy carrying a bruised white girl, assumed the worst. Instead of seeing a boy trying to save a life, they saw a criminal. Within moments, the guards were on Malik, their hands grabbing him roughly. "You're coming with us," one of them barked. "You're under arrest for assault and kidnapping." Malik's mind raced, the injustice of it all crashing down on him. "No, I'm trying to help her. She's in danger," he shouted, but his words fell on deaf ears. He fought back, but it was no use. The weight of their judgment was too heavy, and soon the police arrived, still seeing Malik as the villain rather than the hero. As the guards restrained him, Malik continued to plead his case, but no one was listening. The misunderstanding had taken a deadly turn, and Malik was now the one in danger of being silenced. Will Malik be able to clear his name and save Lily? Stay tuned. The stakes have never been higher. With a burst of courage, Malik stepped forward, confronting the man who had taken Lily. "Let her go," he shouted, his voice filled with desperation. The tension in the room grew palpable as the man, Daniel Reese, turned to face him, his eyes narrowing. For a moment, the air was thick with fear and uncertainty. Malik's heart pounded in his chest as he tried to stand his ground. This was it. This was the moment where everything would change. Malik didn't know how he was going to do it, but he knew that he couldn't let Lily suffer any longer. He had to protect her, no matter the cost. As the man's grip on Lily tightened, Malik's instincts kicked in. He needed to do something, anything, to buy time. With a sudden movement, Malik shouted again, distracting Daniel long enough for the police, who had finally arrived, to rush in and apprehend the kidnapper. But just as the man was being subdued, the unthinkable happened. In the chaos of the rescue, a shot rang out. Malik, trying to shield Lily from any more harm, was struck. His body hit the ground with a sickening thud, his vision blurring as pain coursed through him. The world seemed to slow as Malik's mind raced. He couldn't let this be the end. Not after everything. Despite the searing pain, Malik's determination didn't waver. The police quickly moved to secure the scene, and Daniel Reese was arrested, his plans unraveling before him. But Malik's primary concern was Lily. She had been through so much already, and he needed to ensure that she was safe. The officers quickly took charge, ensuring that she was carefully handed over to them, but the trauma would remain with her for a long time. It wasn't until later, once the police began to piece everything together, that the true connection between Daniel Reese and Lily's father was revealed. Daniel Reese wasn't just a random criminal. He had ties to Gregory Harris, Lily's father, who had long been unaware of the dark dealings in his own life. Reese had been working for a dangerous gang, and it was through their influence that he had kidnapped Lily. Her father, for all his wealth and power, had been blind to the danger lurking in his own circle. As the aftermath settled, Malik, though weakened by his injury, found solace in the knowledge that he had done the right thing. Lily was safe, and the kidnapper had been taken off the streets. But the emotional toll was heavy. Malik had risked everything to protect her, and the cost had been high. As he lay in a hospital bed, recovering from the gunshot wound, Malik reflected on the choices he had made. He had been faced with unimaginable odds, but in the end, he had done what needed to be done. For Lily, the road to recovery would be long. The trauma she had endured, the fear of being taken from everything she knew, would linger in her mind. But with Malik's bravery, she had been given the chance to heal. Her bond with Malik grew stronger as they both processed the ordeal, and they shared a newfound understanding of what it meant to stand up for what was right. As the days passed, Malik's recovery continued, and with it, his growth. What had started as an act of bravery had turned into a life-changing experience for both him and Lily. But their story was far from over. The lessons learned from that day would shape the rest of their lives, and they would carry them forward as they faced whatever challenges lay ahead. Will he fully recover from the events that changed his life? And what will come next for Lily and her family? The journey is far from over. In the sterile quiet of the hospital room, Lily sat by Malik's side, tears streaming down her face. Her small hand gripped his weakly, as though afraid to let go. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice trembling with gratitude and relief. Malik, still recovering from the bullet wound, smiled softly, despite the pain. "I did what anyone would do," he replied, his voice weak but steady, as if the weight of his actions hadn't fully sunk in yet. As the door to the hospital room opened, Gregory Harris, Lily's father, entered. The wealthy businessman, whose life had been shaped by privilege and prejudice, stood in the doorway. His face was cold, his eyes hardened by years of living in a world built on power. But today, everything was different. Today, he saw a young boy, Malik, whose courage had changed the course of his daughter's life. Gregory had never fully understood the struggles of people like Malik. His wealth had shielded him from the harsh realities others faced, and his views were shaped by a lifetime of distance from the struggles of those less fortunate. But today, seeing Malik's bravery in the face of danger, he couldn't ignore the truth. For the first time, Gregory saw Malik not through the lens of race or class, but as someone who had risked everything to protect his daughter. Gregory approached Malik's bedside, his face filled with a mix of shock and remorse. He couldn't find the words at first, but the guilt weighed heavily on him. "I've been wrong," he finally said, his voice cracking. "I judged you because of your skin. You saved my daughter's life, and I'll never forget that." Malik, though exhausted from the events and his injury, could see the sincerity in Gregory's eyes. For all the years of prejudice, for all the assumptions Gregory had made, this moment of humility was a turning point. Gregory's voice trembled with emotion as he continued, "I don't know how to make up for what I've done, but I want to help you. I want to offer you a chance, financial support, opportunities. You deserve more than I could ever imagine offering before." For a moment, Malik just looked at him, taking in the magnitude of what was being offered. A chance to make something of himself, a chance to break free from the limitations of his circumstances. This was more than he had ever imagined. He had always known that his bravery wasn't about recognition, but hearing Gregory's words meant something. It was a recognition of his humanity, a recognition of the value Malik had all along. Lily, though still processing the trauma, looked at Malik with gratitude in her eyes. The bond they had formed through their shared ordeal was unspoken, but undeniable. She, too, was changed by everything that had happened. The innocence of her childhood had been shattered, but she had found something in Malik that would stay with her forever: bravery, compassion, and the understanding that standing up for what is right is the only way forward. As Malik and Lily continued to recover, they both realized that their lives had been forever altered. For Malik, this journey had been one of self-discovery. He had stood up against unimaginable odds, challenged the prejudices of the world, and saved a life. For Lily, it was a chance to see the world beyond her father's influence and to forge a new path for herself. The story ends with a bittersweet sense of closure. While the scars of the past may never fully fade, both Malik and Lily have found new strength in each other. The bond they share, forged in the fire of adversity, will continue to shape their futures, no matter what comes next. Stay tuned for the heartwarming conclusion of Malik and Lily's journey. Will they both find peace in the end? The future remains uncertain, but one thing is clear. They are no longer alone in this world. With Gregory Harris's support, Malik's future suddenly looked much brighter. He had been given opportunities he never thought possible, something that most people like him could only dream of. Gregory's offer of financial support, a chance to make something of himself, was a gesture that Malik never saw coming. Though the shadows of his past still loomed over him, the possibility of a better life was now within reach. Malik was determined to use this chance to not only change his own life, but also make a difference for those he loved. His courage had opened doors, and now it was up to him to walk through them. Lily, too, had been forever changed by the events they had gone through. The girl who had once been sheltered from the realities of life, who had lived in a world of privilege, now understood the importance of standing up for others, regardless of their race or background. Her worldview had shifted dramatically. She saw how Malik's bravery had challenged not just a dangerous man, but a system of prejudices and assumptions. The bond between her and Malik grew stronger each day, with both of them vowing to continue doing good in a world that needed more people like Malik. The road to healing for both Malik and Lily was still long, but with each passing day, they both grew stronger. Malik's path had changed forever after his act of bravery, and he now understood the power of courage, the strength it took to do what was right, even in the face of uncertainty. His future, once clouded by hardship and prejudice, was now full of promise.